Hey everybody, I am looking at a learner assessment that I created probably about 6, 7 years ago, so it's probably outdated and needs to be revisited. However, I really liked it at the time, and so I thought I'd show you what it looks like. So, essentially, it was for a junior international baccalaureate class, and this class was the first step in the international baccalaureate program. Those of you who are familiar with it, um, it's just a lot of work for kids. Those of you unfamiliar, it's kind of like AP or taking a college class, but in high school and with super high standards. And so, as you saw with this assessment, it was a portfolio that students would submit at the end of the semester. And they would have an introduction page, they would have an essay about Anne Frank, they would have an essay about, we read some camp stuff. Then we had an overall kind of summary of a past event, like a personal narrative, and then they had to put all this on a Google site. And at the time I was teaching, and even now, I love how images often take the place of texts, and so I don't like cell phones in school. Don't get me wrong. Um, However, I like that writing often can go along with images, and I love the idea of memes and how we use emojis nowadays. And the guy that sparked that in me, his name is Jay Bolter, and he wrote this book. I have notes on it. It's called Writing Space. You can kind of see it's a 2001 from Lawrence Erbaum and Associates. But there's a phrase that I'd like you to or be familiar with. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's called echophrasis, and it's the idea that graphics in printed publications are used to replace text. And this is a 2001 book, so we all know that that happens a lot now, but it first spawned that interest in my kind of research into that world. Anyway, so that's why I liked using Google Sites with the assignment, because kids could take pictures and put that into their essay and constructed responses. As you saw, I use different levels of achievement in there, depending on whether organization confuses the reader, which would be beginning, and then exemplary, organization that consistently orients the reader. The learning objective that this was designed around was super broad at the time, and it was in, again, International Baccalaureate, and it was that a student engages individual, local, national, and world issues. Oh, you gotta go, sweet. It's okay. And so the first thing, was it valid? And so working from Smith and Reagan's idea on page 108, or their definition of validity, consistent, have good range objective samples. I think at the time it was valid for what I was doing. I mean, in high school, and I was trying to have this incredibly broad learning objective and trying to tie that down into some valid results that would be consistent for the kids. And I was working as a teaching partner of another one, and so we both had those the validity there. Now, reliability, probably not. We didn't do any norming, and we didn't really look at student work compared to past performance, and so that would definitely be something that would need to be done in order to make sure it was reliable and not super subjective. I mean, even though there's a rubric there, there's things that, I mean, we talked about in last week's class. So organization that confuses the reader. Well, what does that mean? Like, I'm lost? And what kind of organization are we talking about? Paragraphs, sentences, that kind of thing. So way more to do with it. Then our assignment this week asks about practicality. I definitely think it was practical, since I was engaging students with technology, integrating that in and having them present that in a mode that they liked. What could have been more practical is if I gave them the option. Would you prefer to present your portfolio to the whole class in like kind of like this right now, or just have the Google site? At the time, it was just the Google site. You had to do it. There was no way around it. And we spent time in class to do that. Sorry, my phone went dead on what I wanted to hit. And so I've kind of talked about some elements that I would change. So one of the biggest thing is a really strong learning objective. Again, as an administrator, I would ask a teacher now to do the same thing. Like, where are we headed? So I get the rubric, and that's nice, and I get that there's a portfolio, even better. But what are we tying that to? Is this a writing standard we're trying to hit? Are we trying to hit multiple reading standards? Let's anchor this and talk more, kind of specifics of it. The other thing on page 114 of Smith and Reagan, it talks about portfolios and the blueprint assessment for portfolios. And one thing that this does not include that would definitely need to be there is a reflection. So asking the students to reflect upon the essays that they've included, what could be changed, what not, and provide some feedback. So working from those two standpoints and kind of looking back over it, I was happy at the time. Now I would really want to spend a lot of time, especially with a colleague, probably in the professional learning community, working on this assessment, especially because it was a summative. And so I'd want to make sure it was pretty solid to give a student a final grade. Anyway, thanks for your time. Hope everybody's doing well.